simple. Alright, now generally when we have more complex, the easiest way to solve these is to clear the denominator. With this one, they all had the same denominator, so that really wasn't necessary, but we certainly could do it. So we'll do this one two ways, just to show how easy it is. Shame on me, there'll be no writing in green and black today. Okay. Oh, don't do that. Alright, now, before I begin, there is an excluded value. That if I solve this equation and x possessed that value, there would be no solution. What is the?
-7.
-7. Why?
Because you can't have -7 as a denominator.
Because if x were -7, the denominator would be 0, and that would make this fraction, and that fraction undefined.
Yeah.
So, -7 is restricted. It's a restricted value. So if we were to solve this equation and get -7 as an answer, and if that were the only answer, there would be no solution. If that were one or multiple answers, we would just exclude it. Okay, so first thing we'll just show you, okay, they have the same denominator, so we can just add the numerators. This is actually the easiest way to do this one. And because they have the same denominators, we set the numerators equal and we solve. Okay, so we found that x equals -5. And that was our solution. Now, we could actually work this same problem by clearing the denominators, which is very helpful when our problems get a little more complex. So to clear denominators, our rule is to multiply through by the common denominator.
Yep.
Well, when we only have one denominator, that's it. That's the common one.
Put it on, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, she understood.
Okay.
That was impressive. This one.
I did take two years of Spanish. Now the first year I was in a regular Spanish 1 class. The second year of Spanish, no, it wasn't. I took it on my own during a Spanish 1 class with earbuds. We didn't have earbuds in. Headphones on, and with no instruction.
But then like.
So I learned. I can't tell you how much I learned that year. All right.
You still remember stuff from?
I took 2.
All right.
I can't even remember.
Why do you multiply everything by 6 + 9?
I'm going to show you, this is another way to solve, and it's very helpful when our problems get a little more complex. Definitely not needed for this one. We showed you the easiest way to solve that one. This is the way you should, because they had a common denominator to start with. But when we multiply through by the common denominator, what happens is it eliminates every denominator. And we learned to do this when we were solving simple equations. We would clear the denominators. Well, since we only have one, everything cancels, and look what we end up with. Exactly the same equation. Oh,
Isn't that what you just did in the first place?
okay. No, in the first place I said, hey, everything has a common denominator, so the only way this could be true is if this numerator equals that numerator. On this one, I eliminated the denominators so that they weren't in play at all. Yes, ma'am?
So for like, say there's an equation where like, it's like x plus 2 and x minus 2 and then x squared minus 4, would you do like,
You'd factor.
you'd factor?
Oh, yeah.
So you'd multiply like the first one by x minus 2 and
Yeah.
the second, okay.
Yeah, that's where we're headed. All right, so here's our next example, example 2. Still a very, very, very simple problem,
That looks fun.
okay? So, let's go ahead and tell me, what are the excluded value or values for x in this problem? 8. Is anything else excluded?
-3.
Nope, just 8. Okay? So, 8 is our excluded value. All right, now, if we go with the clearing fractions, what we want to do is we want to factor all of our denominators so we can find that common denominator. Once again, I gave you a really easy one, didn't I? Okay, what is the common denominator?
5x minus 8.
5 times x minus 8. So each, we would multiply through by 5 times x minus 8, which means each individual fraction gets multiplied by 5 times x minus 8. Okay? Now, so on this one, the 5's cancel, the x minus 8's cancel, and we're just left with 2. On this one, the 5's cancel, and we're left with 4 times x minus 8. On this one, the x minus 8's cancel, and we're left with 30. So it gives me 2 plus 4x minus 32 equals 30. So that's negative 30. When I move it to the other side, it's positive 30. So 60 equals 4x,
62.
and x
Oh, wait.
equals 15. Which is not excluded, and therefore my solution. Make sense? Cool.
You should find whatever one.
All right. There it is.
Sam.
Everything by the same.
And she was like,
Right. When I'm solving equations, when I do something to one side of the equation, I'm doing the exact same thing to the other. So what ends up happening is you end up multiplying just those things. But this is why. So we have to understand the why in simple problems so that when we get to more complex problems, we're not tripped up by
so
them.
like the only way we can communicate is como se dice.
Yes. Sure. Okay. Number 3.
X minus x squared. Wait.
X minus 3. X times. X times x squared. That's the common.
That is a common denominator. So what are my excluded values for x?
3.
And
0.
0.
0. That's the same thing, right?
So x cannot be 3 or 0. Okay, give it a try, guys. Let's see what you can do.
Alright. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I know, I don't know why. I thought it was because it was scared.
Yeah.
No,
Negative 1, that's it.
Second, please. X minus 3, x plus 1. Just negative 1 is the answer.
What?
my question to you was, why did you multiply the first one by x minus 3?
Because it was like,
I am about no. Carson, sorry. You got it. I didn't realize that.
it took me a minute on that. It's like, well, no, so I got really
I give you some
You're stoked to be.
okay.
I had to be the one. Time.
1.
All right. So we multiply 3 by the common denominator on this one, which is x times x minus 3. This is one way we can solve. All right. And so this first one, x, gets multiplied by x plus 1. And the second one, 3, is multiplied by x minus 3. And then in the last one, everything cancels. So we end up with x squared plus x equals 3x minus 9 plus 12. So x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Now this is a quadratic. the easiest way to solve a quadratic is to factor if it does. This one does factor nicely. What happens if it doesn't?
Then you quad.
Then you use quadratic formula.
Then you can use
Okay.
the equal or the complete whatever.
Could we complete the square? We could. Yes.
Yes.
And we had to do that on, what was that, number 5 on that worksheet the other night? You had to complete the square to be able to take the square root of both sides. It was not on your quiz.
If it was, I would have failed because I don't.
Alright, so x equals 3 or negative 1. But 3 is an extraneous solution. So my only answer is negative 1 because this is extraneous. Okay, now let's tie this equation back into what we know about graphs. Think about what 3 would be on the graph. It would be a vertical asymptote or a hole if it canceled. Correct. So when we think about it that way, it kind of makes more sense about why x can't be that. We can think about it algebraically, or we can tie it back into the graph. Now, when you solve some of these, you're going to end up with quadratics that factor. When you solve some of these, you're going to end up with quadratics that don't factor, hence quadratic formula. What happens if we go clear everything and we're left with a lovely cubic that won't do 4-term grouping? What would we do? What would our options be?
Then
We could.
I mean, be guessing, but.
We could. And that's where we would have to go with it if we didn't have our calculator.
so we
But if we do have our calculator, what could we do?
graph to find the zeros.
We could graph it to find the zeros. Okay? So you may end up with something that works out beautifully algebraically. You do not even need to pick up your calculator, which is always a lovely thing. We may end up with some where you do have to, you're left with a cubic, and you're going to have to look at the zeros on the function. There's all sorts of functions. Sometimes the easier ones are harder. Like, what would you do with this one?
Ooh, multiply each side by that.
Multiply every side by x, but what's our only excluded value? 0. And when we multiply by x, we just get x squared plus 5x equals 14.
So just be minus.
So minus 14 equals 0. So this easily factors to
X equals negative
X
7
minus 2.
x minus 2. All right. So my solutions are,
Negative 7.
how many of you could have done that just by looking at the problem and going, oh, negative 7 and positive 2 work?
I have to write it out.
Yeah, I
could've
could've
done
done
that.
Okay.
I would have, it's not gonna take that much work to solve it.
And you
so-
can, sometimes you can just look at it and you can see the answer, and that's kind of cool when that happens. Other times, you can see one of them, but maybe
Actually, I
not
can
both.
see 2. I can see 2. It's like pretty easy.
You can see,
Okay.
I can see it both.
Yeah.
you can see them both?
I can see it both now.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, do you ever get frustrated when a teacher makes you share the work and you can just see it in your head?
Always.
At physics.
Yeah, I was gonna say definitely in physics.
Physics, I write down what list things.
Physics too.
Yeah, I hate writing down that and the sine cosine. Like I can just do that in my calculator.
What are you talking about?
Like in
Physics.
physics, we're using sine and cosine. We're doing.
You're doing a bunch of right triangle tricks?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to write it down like a ton of work.
I know.
I
I said it's the hardest thing ever. He's like,
Well, sometimes as a teacher, we're surprised at what things stump people,
no,
and it changes year to year.
I am.
So sometimes you need like go over stuff.
I'm
that's
surprised
people
at
don't
the things.
get.
Yeah.
I get. Aren't you, Colin?
And sometimes I think I've done an excellent job explaining, and I'm like, so are you guys good? And they're all like, that doesn't happen often in here. Usually enough of you get it to where you can help out all the people that did, which is helpful. Okay,
No, the physics, you just teach.
that's really kind of it for today.
Yeah.
The only thing that's gonna happen is you are gonna have one on your homework.
Homework.
Well, on your homework that takes the calculator. It's a cubic
It says
that, oh, well, you shouldn't have any because you only have this many problems and you have time to finish.
Alright,
7
so-
problems.
Okay,